Okay, it's time for the pitch letter assignment. So let's review pitch letters a little bit. Hopefully you've read the chapter on pitch letters before you've gotten to this point, and it's probably a good idea to have read the Larimer book by this point, because he gives lots of really, really good tips on pitching. And if you Google Richard Larimer, he's got some websites and some interesting things going out to the larger world, even an interesting character to follow on Twitter if you are so inclined. So what's the pitch? Pitch is an attempt to convince a journalist or a connector to report on a topic that's relevant to your product or company, that's relevant to that journalist's audience. So we're asking this connector to go out and spread the word for us. That's effectively what we're doing. And the pitch letter is going to be the vehicle that we use to do that. So to make an effective pitch, we've got to go through several steps. We've got to be conscious of several things. First of all, we've got to establish credibility. Why are we a credible source that this journalist or blogger or whoever should bother reporting on? So we've got to establish that in our pitch somehow. We'll talk about how we do that. We've got to build relationships. This is something that happens from the first time you pitch a connector, but it builds over time. The more good material we give a particular connector, the better the relationship is going to be. They will be more likely to pick up our stories, and they may even, or hopefully this is going to happen, they're going to start calling or emailing you when they have a story that they're working on, and they think that you or someone in your company might be a good resource. When we're pitching, we have to make sure that everything is aligned. So the story that we are pitching has to align with the medium, with the connector itself, be it a blog or a magazine or a newspaper, TV show, etc. It's got to align with the values of that particular medium and their audience. If there's a big disconnect there, then we shouldn't be pitching it, right? So we have a big connectors list, and there are some stories that we don't pitch to every single connector. So we've got to be aware of this alignment between the story, the medium, and the audience. And then the pitch has got to serve the interest of the connector. Meaning, is this story, is the coverage of this story going to help them, is going to do something for them? And what they're looking for is ways to sell their medium, right? Get more people to watch their news broadcast or buy their magazine or newspaper. And are they going to serve their audience better? So those are the things we need to be conscious of. And pitch cannot be rambling. It's got to be concise. Here's what I have. Here's how it helps you. Here's the information I've got for you. Can we do it? We've got to watch out. Got to be sure that everything that we pitch, everything that we talk about in marketing public relations in general, is newsworthy. This is something that's mentioned very early on in the book. Is the subject of interest to the connector, and is it of interest to the audience? Not only is it of interest, but is it objective? Meaning, I don't want sales speak in my pitch. It needs to be really news. All right. When the news medium reports on it, it's got to look like it is news. It's something of interest, something of value to the audience, not a veiled sales pitch. So you've got to be able to make your connector look good with the story ideas that you're giving them. It's got to serve their audience. So a pitch letter can be a letter. I mean, that's really how it started. But nowadays it can be email or another type of written document that's presented for a whole host of reasons. Primarily to pitch a story. Here I've got an idea about a person, my company, a product, etc., and I would like you, the connector, to cover it, write about it, produce a TV news story, put a blog post up about it. But it could also be suggesting a segment for a talk show. So you could be pitching a producer of a talk show. You can try and secure an interview with certain people or certain journalists or certain editors about a certain topic that the people in your organization are expert in. You can use a pitch letter to position a person or an organization as an expert available for future comment. In the Larimer book, he talks about it as source filing. Here I am. I've got this person, or it's me, or it's my whole organization that's expert in this sort of thing. Anytime you've got a story that comes up about this, feel free to call us. for some commentary. We're good at this. We're noted experts, and your audience will appreciate what we have to say. And then the pitch letter or any way that we present the pitch can be explaining an accompanying press release or press kit and saying, trying to convince the person who's receiving it, the connector, that it's worth to take a look at the press kit or the press release because there's a really good story in there somewhere. So that's the reason or reasons why we might put a pitch letter together. When we look at the pitch letter, the first thing we have is an opening, the first paragraph. And there are several strategies for that opening paragraph. Again, remember, we are not trying to sell a product with the pitch letter. We are trying to convince a journalist, an editor, a blogger, to write a story or produce a video story about whatever the subject we have at hand. So here are some tactics. First thing is we can start off with a startling or little-known fact to catch the attention of the person reading it. Did you know that if a barber commits a felony, he can lose his barber's license? But if you're convicted of a felony, you can earn a barber's license while in prison. Okay, that's something that's actually true. Something that I found out, I thought that was interesting and would have gotten my attention. Now, if I've got a pitch that can follow that, if I can support that later on in the pitch letter, I've got something really strong. I've got something that's attention-getting. Using double entendres also work well. So saying something like, corporate sponsorship for ski team goes downhill, right? It's something interesting. You say, what does that mean? I want to read on. Geico has a good approach, and they ask a question. Did you know that 3-minute phone call can save a consumer hundreds of dollars? Okay, that's ad copy. That's something from an ad. But that sort of thing is appropriate for a pitch letter. Remember, it's got to lead on to something that's newsworthy, not a sales letter. We can also use intrigue when we put a pitch letter together. The secret to a longer life may already be in your refrigerator. That's an intriguing sentence. Again, we're going to follow it up with more. And there's certainly nothing wrong with cutting to the chase, getting straight to the point, going right for it. We're going to be speaking at the Rotary Club next week. Here's the topic we're speaking about it, and we know that your readers would appreciate hearing about this. Very direct to the point, but it's certainly a strategy that works. So once we've got that opening, that first paragraph, or perhaps just the first sentence, these are the things that we need to do. Think about each of these major bullets as a paragraph of your pitch letter. Perhaps we can combine the middle two bullets, information, research, and support material, into one. The first thing that I want to do after I get the person's attention, the connector's attention, is to demonstrate that I've got some type of familiarity with the connector. Right? And what this means is you've researched this connector. You know what they write about. You know the types of stories that they produce. You know what's interesting to them. You know about their audience. You understand the detail. So you want to show that you know something about their interests. Over the years, you've written a lot about XYZ subject, and I feel that this story that we have will be of a lot of interest to your audience. Right? So you combine the connector's interest with their audience interest, and you've got something. You're demonstrating familiarity with them. And then you want to give them information. Okay, journalists are busy people. They're on deadlines often. And bloggers often want to get lots of information out on a regular basis, and they usually have other jobs and doing other things. So the more information you can give them about your particular story, the more likely they are to actually pick up the story, the more likely they are to produce something about your story. It also saves them time from having to go out and find this stuff. And it also kind of ensures us as marketing people that the journalist, the connector, is using the type of information that we want them to use. If we don't give them any of this support information, they will likely go out and find it themselves, and it may not be what we want them to present. So if you can bring them some research and information, some scientific facts, some graphs and charts, some opinions from some noted experts, some statistics, that's really valuable. And anything else that we can give them, photos, audio recordings, some video, that's what B-roll footage is, that will help us or help the likelihood of being covered. So that's the way we want to progress through the body, and then we want to have an action step. We want to ask them to commit to covering our story. Mention that you're going to contact them to follow up within a certain period of time, and certainly tell them that they're welcome to contact you for more information. Certainly here, you want to realize that journalists and bloggers work crazy hours, so you need to be available at any time. If a journalist is writing a story at 10 p.m., even though you get off work at 5, you need to be available. Your cell phone has got to be next to you, and you've got to be ready to help the journalist out whenever it is that they call. Okay, you also want to be let them know that you're going to be following up with them. Okay, embargoes are something that we want to mention. We talked about that in the press release section. But if there's an embargo on the story, not only do you want it on the press release, you want to mention that in the pitch letter, whatever form that pitch letter may happen to take. We can also give exclusives. And the pitch letter is a great place to discuss the exclusive. Exclusive is where we give the information, where we give the story just to a single connector. That, if it's a valuable story, entices them to give you some pickup. You will be the only one with the story. This will draw readers, viewers, listeners to your medium. Again, the story has to have some impact. An exclusive on something nobody cares about doesn't have a whole lot of value. But it may be a good way for you to get a lot of coverage in one particular high exposure medium. So exclusives certainly work. And you've heard news outlets talk about exclusives throughout your media consuming life, so that should not be something that's unfamiliar to you. One of the things that we use as marketing public relations people is the editorial calendar. Most media put out an editorial calendar for a year's time. Others do it rather than putting out a whole year at a time, they'll put out a month or a quarter at a time, but often it's done in a year's time. And basically what this is a layout of the topics they're going to cover month to month or week to week. And this gives us a guide, and there's some links here that you can take a look at. It gives us a guide as to what they're going to be covering in a given month. And if we can bring something up here, hopefully this is showing on your screen. But within the Lehigh Valley Magazine, or Lehigh Valley Style Magazine editorial calendar, it'll show us that in the January issue, they focused on bridal issues, and they had a spotlight on New Year's Eve and making New Year's resolutions. And in July, they had an issue they're focusing on our favorite things and summertime entertaining. These are the sort of things that we will use in our pitch letters. The editorial calendar is very useful to us because we can go and we can talk about our knowledge of what's going on. We see that in January you're going to talk about summertime entertaining. We have a particular product or a particular service that will be of interest to your readers who are interested in entertaining outdoors or interested in barbecue grills or those sorts of things. So we can use those editorial calendars to help us. So do some research, and here are a list of tips. These are also in the textbook. I'm not going to read those things to you, but use those editorial calendars to help your pitch. Mention those in your pitch letters. Mention those in your follow-up calls. That helps you explain that you actually understand the medium itself. You've done some research, and that goes a long way with the connectors.